Hello, everybody. Welcome to Wholehearted Loving. I'm Stephanie.
Hi, I'm Georgiana.
Today we're going to be talking about anger, within and without, I'm going to say. And if you would like self-reflection prompts for this episode and for every episode, you can find those on our Instagram at Wholehearted Loving. Before we get started, we're going to do a body-based self-connection practice to connect with ourselves before we connect with each other and this podcast.
Okay. As you were talking, I was sort of trying out different body connection practices, and I was like having a little moment with myself, like a chuckling moment of this stuff is so neat, how there's so many options. It's so flexible. I wanted to walk us through, because our topic is anger, I wanted to walk us through a body connection practice that uses the movement and the energy of like pushing into something. Right. So, and I know that, you're listening and you might be, driving, walking, running, whatever. And so I encourage you to adapt it in whatever way you can. And so first, let's just bring some awareness to the body. For some reason, my toes want to wiggle. So I'll just let that be my body connection moment. And bringing some awareness to the breath. And that has made me realize I'm thirsty. So I'll have a drink. And then choose something to push your hands into, or at least one hand into. It could be the wall. I've had clients push their hands into the desk. I am actually like the easiest way for me to push. I could push into the ottoman right now, but it's very soft. So it doesn't really give me the sensation that I can push my energy into it. So I realize I'm sitting cross-legged, or is it called cross-legged? In like lotus position. And I notice that I can push down on my right thigh, like really hard. And it doesn't hurt my body, but it really gives me this feeling that I can put all this energy into this pushing. I'm just noticing how that feels. And you might want to like release and push again. And you could also even pair it with your breath. So it might be breathing in and then exhaling to push. Breathing in to release and exhaling to push again. This time I have the impulse to push with two hands. So one hand is pushing on closer to my knee on my thigh, and one hand's pushing on my foot. And it feels nice to feel the pressure, the ability to push full force with both hands. And then if it feels good, you can shake things out.
Big difference for me with the different types of pushing.
What did you notice?
I first had the awareness that I'm a two-hand girl. So two hands on the ottoman. And right as you were saying, it's a bit too soft. I was thinking, this is a bit too soft. And it's not like it's a pushing motion, but I'm pushing down. There's not a lot of resistance, and it's like none of my weight being borne by it.
Yeah.
So then I moved to the wall. And again, two hands, I really like the feeling of firmness and that I can lean my weight into the push. I like to let the push bear my weight.
Yeah.
And I also tried the leg, and I like the sensation of, what's the difference here between pushing the wall, the inanimate object, and feeling the sensation of the push on my leg? Yeah. I like that in its own way.
Yeah. So you feel the sensation of it, like the energy going through your hands, but you also feel the experience of it in the legs when you push on it.
Yeah. But then I noticed I don't like, so there's so much detail here, Gigi. The I like the sensation of the cool feeling of the wall against my
Mm-hmm.
hands, but I don't like the hardness. And I discovered that I liked the weight bearingness. So I thought, okay, I'll go back to the ottoman
Mm-hmm.
because that is softer.
Mm-hmm.
But I tried pushing with my knuckles. So, like using basically
Mm.
my fists to lift my own
Okay.
weight
Yeah,
up.
yeah. Okay.
And that was
That does feel better. Like I'm trying that now, and there's the sensation that comes in the fist that doesn't come in the hands if you just
mm-hmm.
push with your palms. Yeah. And when you said you like the softness but the firmness, I was like, oh, I wonder what it would be like for you to push on the armrest of the couch,
Oh, yes.
right? And it might be, I don't know if it's too low, but this is what's neat is you start noticing, hey, I like this element of it and not this so much. I want to tweak it this way, but like, oh, I tweaked it this way and that was good for this, but not good for this. And it's so symbolic of the choices we make in life too, right? So often people are like, I don't know how to make choices. I don't trust myself. And often I find it's because we put pressure on ourselves to make the choice immediately. And we think that there's only one right choice.
Yeah.
And here we're like practicing giving myself time and permission to discover what feels good and to tweak it and to keep tweaking it until it feels sort of just right.
Mm-hmm. And this could carry over in so many ways, like I don't need to be feeling angry to enjoy the sensation of pushing and bearing my weight with my hands. But
Mm-hmm.
noticing that that feels good might adds that to the pool of things that might feel good at any given moment. And when
Yes.
you're asking yourself the question, what would feel good right now? You've got this huge grab bag to choose from.
Yeah, I often use this one not when I'm feeling angry, but because for the same reasons I like leaning my weight onto something. I like feeling the firmness. I like the coolness of the wall. I do it in the shower as well, actually.
Mm-hmm.
But like if you practice pushing on the wall, you also will notice, hey, how does it feel to push against it with my elbows bent or my arms outstretched? Or if my legs are sort of both left and right, feet are at about the same spot, maybe hip width apart. But I prefer having one leg, one foot in front of the other, sort of like a runner's stance, and then pushing, like I'm like trying to push something heavy out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
Like that feels really good for me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Often. So just a practice of pushing against something can reveal so much to yourself about yourself for this moment, right? Because if you did it 5 minutes later, you might reveal, or you probably would reveal other things,
Mm-hmm.
different things.
Yeah. So, anger. We've talked about anger before, but this came up in a slightly specific context for me. A woman who's a member of our program reached out and asked us if we had some somatic practices to help a client of hers with anger. And it seems like a simple question, and I wished that my answer could have been yes, here you go. But instead, what came up is like, that's such a multifaceted anger management has so many areas to explore within it. And also, what does she mean when she says anger? What does she mean when she says management? What does she mean when she says help with?
Mm-hmm.
So that made me think about the differences between. Okay, let me backtrack a little bit. For many years, I did social work, and I worked for a couple of those years for a big organization in the Lower Mainland for an anger management program. And I think what was happening there was that parents were looking for their kids to behave. You know,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
it wasn't that we were hoping to help them manage the emotions and thoughts and sensations that come up with anger so that they could lead a happier life. Of course, that would be a byproduct, but really what we were looking for there was to get kids to not lash out or hurt each other or be inappropriate in certain settings and not have outbursts, right? Which is one of the many aspects of anger management. But the work that we do here is about being with sensations and discovering helpful alternatives and connections with the body that it's really an inside job.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought we could talk about that a bit.
Yeah, I think of the when you mentioned this as a potential topic for the podcast, and you said anger management. all sorts of stuff came up in my body, and thoughts came up in my mind of exactly like behavior control,
Yeah.
right? Feeling suppression, teaching people how to bite their tongue and shut up, which is like, it's coming from a well-intentioned place. And I remember, because I used to work for a counseling agency, we were funded by the Ministry of Children and Families. And I would have clients come in, like refer to us. And it might be, in these cases, a mom or a dad they had gotten their certificate in anger management, yet still somehow struggling in life and parenting. And they were open to working together. And my approach even back then was very body-based. It was very compassionate. It was about being self-accepting and understanding, hey, what is my mind doing in this moment? What's my body needing in this moment? And these people were like, well, this is way more helpful. I just felt like a crazy person because I could sit there and listen to what they were teaching and I could understand it in the moment. But like when I'm with my kid or with my partner, like these explosive moments would still happen. So it was neat to be able to teach them and walk through with them different nervous system regulation practices, which is more what I think of now. Like instead of managing anger, can we learn how to recognize that our nervous system is dysregulated without all the shame? Mm-hmm. And then can we bring in the different tools that we can use to help bring a little bit more regulation to the system? Can we learn how to feel the moment where energy really wants to get out of our bodies, whether it's through expression of words or pushing or throwing or whatever it is, and give that a safe expression, a safe outlet to move that energy? And can we work with the mind? How hard are we on ourselves and on other people in our minds? And how does that contribute to the feelings of anger and frustration? And then this other piece that I've always found really important in working with children, and then in the end with adults, was through the work of Dr. Gordon Neufeld. And his work meant a lot to me. I got to study with him. And he had said, when we're working with kids, and I think it applies to all humans, and I think he meant that too, but in this context, he was talking about kids. We want to help kids shift from mad to sad. Because mad might be really easy to express, but what's underneath it is often a sadness, a frustration about something, having to face the futility of something, that you're helpless, that the thing you want just can't happen, that the thing you thought you were going to be able to have or experience isn't going to happen. And there's sadness there, but because we don't know or don't feel safe to express the tenderness of that sadness, the vulnerability of it, we go into expression of it through angry outbursts, right? And I saw that a lot in my oldest kid, actually, and you can see that in temperamentally, my kids are very different from each other. People are very different from each other. And when the slightest thing would go wrong in his little world, his immediate reaction was to blow up, like outwardly. Yell, scream, blame things on people. And also it was quite humorous at the time. He was like very young, like 2, but like blaming inanimate objects. And like, I'm really glad it happened that way and at that age, because something about that, I was like, oh, this is not about there's no logical sense in this. This is just like this energy that needs to come out. And his way is to do it that way. My younger one would go more internal, and he could access sad a lot more easily. Like he would just go to tears more quickly. Whereas my older one would have been like, had he continued on that path and we hadn't maybe supported him with realizing that what those angry outbursts were telling us was that something felt really wrong inside and not okay. And he needed help with that. And he felt really sad or scared or surprised about something. He might have been a kid that was sent to anger management at some point, right? But really, it wasn't like an anger problem.
Mm-hmm.
It was a dysregulation, a sensory overstimulation challenge. It was like a sadness and disappointment, not knowing how to express that in a different way, not knowing how to ask for help challenge,
Yeah.
right?
This sadness and madness thing, I think, is so important. I think it's maybe a bit less muddied, I'm going to say, for kids. It's more like pure, you know? As we become adults, we've been so conditioned and we've learned to control ourselves in certain ways so often, and this can be a gendered thing where, you know, men are socially acceptable to be mad more than sad, and women are socially acceptable to be sad more than angry. And so I think of this for adults probably
Mm-hmm.
more so than children, in that infinity symbol where sadness might be masking anger and anger might be masking sadness, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this can be a really useful thing for whoever's listening to examine for themselves when these things come up. Is there anything hiding underneath this
Yeah.
emotion?
It's really big. Like, I think, it's worth repeating, like, anger might be masking sadness and sadness might be masking anger. Like, if I look at my two kids, they're very different in how, I like to call it, how they express that something feels off, how they show that they're having a hard time.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Because sometimes I think as a parent or as a friend trying to help someone, you're trying to like really get to like, but what is the problem? And sometimes, like, I don't know, I feel like we waste time trying to decipher what the problem is. The main problem is they're having a hard time with something right now.
Yeah.
Right. And if I, like I said, with my older one, his anger, his angry outburst was masking sadness that he didn't know how to speak about and share, maybe didn't even fully know what was happening. But as, we supported him and as we offered the words that said, hey, are you frustrated about this? Were you scared about that? Were you, sad about this? The tears start coming.
Yeah.
Right. And even like now he's 14, but like this was probably last year, like just losing it on me in the car. I remember, because I can't remember what I didn't do that he thought I should have done. And I was trying to support him. And like when a kid is screaming at you, whether they're 2 or 13, like as a parent, as a mom, like there's a moment or more moments that you're like, okay, I need to regulate myself here. Like
Mm-hmm.
don't go into the battle of words and don't go into the battle of logic, because it's not going to end in anything good or supportive. So I managed to sort of see that me bringing logic to the situation wasn't helping. It was escalating. So I was like, okay, I need to switch gears. Let's just be with his madness. So it was with his madness, along with setting some boundaries around rudeness and all that kind of stuff, right? And then also just helping him face the reality of the situation, that that's not a thing I can change right now. And slowly it became tears, but they were tears that were so held in.
Yeah.
Right. And I was reminded once again, here's my sensitive little boy,
Yeah.
right? Who's just having such a hard time. And then when he could access that, he could tell me, but mom, like, you had told me all along it was going to be this. Like, you can't change the plan out of the sudden, like, because that's not what I'm expecting. And like, I had thought this and now I'm disappointed. And I was like, wow, like, you do know your internal experience, right? If you're given time and if you're given support to regulate. But if I just base it off of the immediate reaction, I would be just so pissed at you. I would label you like a rude kid, ungrateful little piece of whatever, when really it's just a kid having a hard time and not able to express what's happening.
Yeah.
Right?
Totally.
My youngest will hide, if not supported, behind sadness, like tears immediately. And we notice that over time. And so we try to support him, like, is this okay with you? What happened? And he'd be like, no. And usually it'd be relate to his brother. Are you mad about that? Yes. Okay. So then what do you need to say? What do you need to say to him then? right? You need to say, like, that's not okay, right? I don't want you to do that anymore. And like with some gusto, like really to show like that's not okay, set a boundary. So he needed support in that way, because left to himself, like he would have hid in his room and just cried by himself.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so he really needed support leaning into the angry side.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
What excellent points you've brought up. So our own regulation in dealing with other people's
Oh dear.
anger, right? And like there's such a difference here if we're talking about anger management versus being with anger. You know,
Mm-hmm.
are you looking to help this person not feel certain ways? Are you looking to solve their problem, or are you here to support them to be with feelings that they need to learn how to be with? Is it a self-motivation? You know, am I just uncomfortable fielding all of this anger and the big energy that goes with it, and maybe the rudeness or whatever? Am I trying to change that?
Mm-hmm.
Or am I regulated within myself, and am I able to be with what's happening right now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really big. I catch myself in those moments where the impulse is to want to manage behavior,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's like to tell him like, don't talk to me like that. You can't say that to me, or like to like have this rebuttal, on logic, like,
Mm-hmm.
and that's my fight energy, my nervous system dysregulated.
Yeah.
And I feel very grateful that I know how to recognize when that's happening. I feel really grateful that I know how to switch gears, but that took practice, right? And everything I saw in my house growing up was like one parent just aggressive and yelling, and one just quiet and rolling their eyes and making passive aggressive remarks. Like I didn't know how to deal with someone's upset, right? Other than to either cater to them or scream and yell back. Those are my options, right? So as a mom, to grow that muscle of, I'm just learning to sit with you in this. I'm even learning to say, and this was a hard thing for me to say, was like, you're right. It makes sense that you feel this angry, right? Like, and all of a sudden, there's not that the level of pushback, like the level of fire being blown in my face, it slowly like dissipates. It's almost like, what'd you say?
Right. Validating me.
Right? You're validating, like, it's okay that I'm angry. It makes sense to you that I'm angry. You get that I'm angry.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we have an opportunity to work with it together, because I'm not trying to change it. But man, like when you got your own kid saying some not nice things to you, it's very easy to like want to get into like defending yourself and like putting them on blast for their crappy behavior.
For sure. And yeah, if there's one thing that's reminding me of when a woman is angry and she's told to just calm down, to just relax. I'm like, what a great way to make people more angry, by invalidating the feelings they're feeling when they're angry.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if I got like shaken out of ever doing that. Like, I don't know if this is what's interesting also is I don't think I ever maybe would have told an adult to calm down. But like in our society, it seems like it's okay to tell a child to calm down.
Right.
And I remember, I think my oldest must have been 3 or 4. He was on the stairs. He was like losing it about something. And I was like, it was sort of in a playful way, but also like I'm almost at my limit way of like, bud, you need to calm down, right? Can you just calm down? And like, I remember him like standing, almost like throwing his fist down and just like death staring me. Mom, I cannot calm down. And I was like, that's fair. Good point. Yes, you're right. You can't.
Right. You cannot reason with me right now, mother.
And so I think that imprinted in my mind forever from that point of like, that's just not helpful to try to say to someone when they're having a hard time.
Yeah. That's a wonderful bar, I think. Is this helpful? Is the thing I'm about to say helpful? And perhaps for whom,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like, does it cause more problems for me later? Like
Right.
I was able to be really honest with parents when I was doing a lot more family and parent work. Um, we talked a lot about empathizing with children, helping children regulate. But like, to be honest, and like, sometimes you're just done with empathizing. Like, you're at the end of your rope. You just want to go to bed and be done. And you cannot find it in you anymore to empathize and be kind. And so then I said, in those moments, just think about what gets you done quicker. And I remember like being there at that time where it was the perfect opportunity for things to escalate because the kids were pushing boundaries or something and I was at the end of my rope, but I could foresee what would happen. I'm like, if I'm nasty right now and I can't bring that softness and that like, let's just guide us through this, all of us through this, it's going to turn into something way worse. And then I'm going to be stuck here for 2 hours instead of 15 minutes.
Significant. Yeah.
Right. And I think like take that into your adult relationships too, like with the question of, is this helpful?
Mm-hmm.
Is the way I'm going to approach it helpful? I remember that was a way when I was just starting to learn how to shift out of my old protective patterns. And I would have impulses to react a certain way, to protect myself a certain way. I would like play it on the movie screen. I'm like, do I really want to say this thing and do this thing and then come back and need to apologize and repair? I was like, no, I do not. Let's just not put myself in that situation now already.
And you've grown the pause enough to be able to do that as it's happening, right?
Yeah, like I couldn't have done that before. I didn't even know that I had the option.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Well, I think this has been helpful for people who are listening, especially if anger and these concepts are not something they're too familiar with. Is there anything else you want to say before we do a closing practice?
I'm just remembering my alter ego, anger,
Haha. Oh, my favorite.
with my
Seeing
little
Jean
red
angry is one of my favorite activities, actually. So cute.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so we're laughing about this, but really I had to really learn how to allow myself to feel anger and express it and not feel like a mean and bad person. And now I learned by in a very safe group container, learning how to like sort of express it in quite an uncalibrated way to then shift into a more calibrated way of like, I have kindness and presence for myself and for you. And I'm going to tell you that this doesn't work for me. But like, we spoke about this recently in a group, that growing up, I didn't know that there were ways to just tell someone, I'm angry at you right now because you did this or said this, or I feel angry right now because this happened or this happened and I don't want that to happen anymore. Like, that would have garnered no attention as a child. And what I learned was if you want attention, you got to lose your mind. And you got to be saying really nasty things and you got to slam doors. And that's the only time you're going to get heard. And so in adult life, I would oscillate between being the nice girl and like not wanting to create any conflict because conflict freaked me out to I can't hold it any longer and I explode and I'm like the nastiest person you could imagine. And I remember, my ex-partner saying to me at one point, he's like, you could just tell me that you're upset and angry. And I was like, oh, right. I see that pattern now. That like that wasn't an option growing up. Like it never occurred to me I could just say, hey, I'm angry about this.
Yeah. Good. Yeah. I'm glad you had that discovery. What a
Mm-hmm.
difference.
What a difference.
Do you have a closing practice in mind?
I like going with the giving the hands a squeeze. There's something about feeling pressure on the body that I enjoy. And this is such a simple one you can do anywhere, anytime. I mean, most things we can do anywhere, anytime, but I find it really soothing to bring this. I bring this into almost the end of every call I have with a client, often at the end of every group. It's just simple. Nice way to come back to body,
It
to
is.
feel again.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right.
Well, everyone can squeeze their hands into next week when we will see you again. As always, please do like, follow, and subscribe. And if anything we've said here today has been helpful for you, please share it with somebody that you care about. And we'll see you next time.
Bye.